Well, it is a movement of anger and hate, a wave of anti-Elon Musk protests erupting across America. It happened all during the weekend as left-wing protesters targeted over 200 dealerships, showrooms, and charging stations under the banner of Take Tesla Down. It's a movement. Apparently, they don't have any problem taking away people's jobs, because if you destroy the employee workplace, how can you hire people? Anyway, they're protesting senior advisor Elon Musk's efforts to cut out government waste through the Department of Government Efficiency. However, some agitators are still resorting to violence. Is that what we're calling them now? Agitators? They're violent. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts Emily Campagno and Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Jerry Willis, Fox Business correspondent, and Jeremy Hunt, Veterans on Duty chairman and former Army intelligence captain. Well, now the White House is deeming the attacks on Tesla to be domestic terror. Yes, that's more like it. Vehicles and dealerships have been pelted with bullets and Molotov cocktails, causing hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage, and a lot of frightened people driving Teslas. Just this past weekend, protesters encouraged behavior just like that. That's not protesting. In New York, they held up signs that read, "Burn a Tesla, save democracy." And this video shows what happened in Texas. The moment an anti-Tesla agitator rammed his four-wheeler into the side of unsuspecting Tesla owner's vehicle. The victim, fortunately, was not in the car when it happened, but she says the incident has left her living in fear.
It's hurting more of the innocent victims than it is the people that they're trying to hurt. Every day, every second that I have to get in my vehicle, I do worry. And I do worry if I'm going to be in it when they decide to hurt it.
Trump senior advisor Musk is calling out Democrats.
Isn't it shocking how much violence and hatred is coming from the left? I mean, isn't it supposed to be the party that they claim to be the party of empathy? And yet they're burning Teslas and shooting up dealerships and calling for the death of the president and me. I'm like, guys, you know, this is insane. Like, they're gone psycho. I mean, it's really like, I totally understand if somebody doesn't want to buy a product. Yeah, it's up to you. It's a free country, you know, but you don't have to burn it down. Okay? But much. That's somebody else's car. Leave it alone.
Look, a bit of levity there. We could all use it around this topic, but I'm just going to start calling it the Democrat-owned protest at this point. And it really isn't protesting. It is domestic terrorism, setting stuff on fire, blowing stuff up.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what it is. And where is the Democrat leadership?
That's exactly right.
And say, look, this is not who we are.
They're owning it.
Be doing that. There's no ownership of that. Where is Hakeem Jeffries? I mean, you see him. He's on socials all the time. There's a photo op. He's there. But when it comes a time for actual leadership, to actually call out his own party and say, hey, look, this is not what we should be doing, he's nowhere to be found. I mean, so that tells me that they have a lack of leadership and really a lack of any integrity to stand up and say this is unacceptable. And that's what Democrat leaders need to get their head around right now.
Well, and Emily, again, I'm not going to wait for them to take responsibility. We'll just call it the Democrat leg, because if you don't try to change something, what are you doing? You're choosing it.
And the other thing is, if there's not a deterrence, then people will continue doing this. So I want to dig into a little bit about your point about domestic terrorism. Let's take Washington State, for example, that enjoys sort of a self-identification as radicals, but really what they are domestic terrorists. And the reality is that 20%, a record year in 2023 in Washington State, were sold EV vehicles. So that means a large proportion of that were Teslas. So that means that almost 20% of all the vehicles in Washington State might be Teslas. It's in their best interest to come out swinging, to charge every single one of those people with domestic terrorism. And then I argue, since in addition to being totally destroyed, that poor woman that you interviewed earlier, where she says up to $5,000, maybe even more dollars worth of damage on her Tesla. Well, make sure that these criminals pay for it. Make sure that they're then punitively charged with 3 times the amount. I mean, let's get some deterrence in here, because at the end of the day, if there isn't such, if we don't charge them, make them be on the hook for the monetary damage, and then show them that this is unacceptable, then they're just going to keep doing it and patting themselves on the back for so.
All right, you mentioned Hakeem Jeffries, former Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and House Minority Leader right now. I'm sure he'd love the Speaker job if he could get his hands on it. Hakeem Jeffries We're at a loss for words when chased down for a comment about the violence against Elon Musk and Tesla.
Tell us what you think about what's happening with the Tesla products, the violence at the dealerships. What's your take on the situation?
Sorry, I'm a little bit late here right now.
What's your take on it? Do you denounce the violence?
Oh, she's late in a lot of ways.
Could you imagine if Mike Johnson was run down or John Thune was run down and they said, what do you think about the burning of a business of a liberal? And they just turn their head. I mean, these are people driving in their vehicles I've seen. And then, you know, people try to hurt them, you saw
Force
that
them off the
four-wheeler,
road.
force them off
Yeah.
the road. And then
Yeah.
that, you know, stationary vehicle that incurred all that damage from that four-wheeler there. It's insane that they won't call this out. So too are the protests themselves insane. I watched video of one in Manhattan. These protesters had these coffin-shaped posters. And on these coffin-shaped posters, they were laying down, like faking death. And the coffin-shaped posters had these messages: killed by the system 2025. Well, you weren't killed, you're alive, and you're protesting with coffin-shaped posters. Death by Doge bite, I guess points for creativity there, Doge bite. Musk made Trump out Social Security, not sure what that one means. NIH cuts cancer research. Medicaid cuts killed me. Didn't kill you, you're still alive. And RIP Medicaid, rest in peace Medicaid. Devoid of facts. Elon Musk came out about this Manhattan protest and said, I've not cut Medicaid, Social Security, unless you consider cutting fraud out of these programs, which saves the system, cutting them. They have not cut benefits for anyone. But where are the facts from these protesters? Shame on anyone promoting these protesters, and shame on the liberal media for suggesting Elon Musk was doing a Nazi hand signal when he was not. You have demonized this man, and the outgrowth of that has been violence.
Yeah, but you know that liberals often like to compare everything to slavery and the Holocaust.
Of course
I mean,
they do.
as if those points in history were not horrific enough and deserve their own lane and respect.
Exactly.
I mean, it's unbelievable, their lack of imagination. Jerry, let's talk just money here.
Yes.
When you talk about the earth cutting that goes into making an EV, right, for that battery.
Oh, yeah,
and the car
absolutely.
blows up. Emily alluded to this. Even if you didn't have to pay for the shell of the car, those batteries are very expensive. We don't even have, in this country, a lot of the materials to make them. So we have to buy more through China. I mean, these people hate the country because they have not figured any of this out, and all of it is expensive.
So the young woman we quoted, we ran her sound here talking about losing, you know, her Tesla attacked. She said, this was my dream car. And you said $5,000, $7,000 worth of damage, probably more. This is terrible. And I just wanted to talk about money in this way. Follow the money. That's what you've got to do with these protests, right? Who is paying for this? And this is a question that Elon Musk is asking. And when you look at the reporting on this, what you find is that a lot of this cash is coming from the Democratic Progressive Party. It's coming from people who are liberals.
Is George Soros on that list?
Did not see George Soros' name, but there is an organization called, get this, the Climate Defenders. They want to protest Elon Musk's Tesla.
Who are they funded by?
These are the people. I don't have that level of detail,
I'm going to dig
Harris.
deeper, but I love what you bring.
But let me just finish my thought here. These are people who are calling for lower emissions, and that's exactly what Elon Musk, the great innovator, is providing. He's reducing emissions. So, I mean, this is just crazy. And this is cash. This is money on the barrel that is funding these. These aren't grassroots, you know, people rising up. No. It's, you know, your progressives at work.
And what, in your estimation, flipped the switch? Because they were willing to go out and buy these cars. I mean, seriously, it wasn't just
Two
that
words.
other people had them. Some of them had them.
Donald Trump. They don't like Donald Trump. I actually think this is where all the venom is coming from.
To senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy with more on Musk's visit to the CIA today. Hey, Peter.
Yes, Jackie, good afternoon. And we are told that Elon Musk is not at Langley to get a briefing about state secrets. Instead, he is there at the invitation of the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe, to talk more about how much it costs to collect all those state secrets.
We are preserving critical programs that the American people need while cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse out of our government. And it's not just Elon Musk, it is every cabinet official across the board who is committed to doing this at their respective agencies.
Musk's instruction from President Trump now is to use a scalpel instead of a hatchet, and President Trump has hesitated to share some state secrets like war plans with China with Elon Musk because of his business interests there. And we don't yet know the exact guardrails put in place for today's CIA sit-down. There are many former spies, though, hoping that Doge doesn't make too many changes too quickly.
The agency, the CIA, is at the heart of the protection of national security interests. So my argument would be very, very careful. And Elon has said this. We have to be very careful about our cuts. Be very careful about how you progress through those cuts for an organization like the CIA. Is there bloat there? Well, you could argue again, it's a bureaucracy.
Officials here are monitoring the nationwide anti-Musk protests. In fact, there was one just across the street from the White House campus today that staffers would have seen on their way to Starbucks. But there is no indication at this time that Elon Musk plans to quit Doge before his 130 days as a special government employee are up. Jackie?
All right. Peter Ducey for us at the White House. Thanks, Peter. Host of The Bottom Line on Fox Business. Dagan, what do you make of those purchases?
Well, they must have thought it was a great bargain, I'm assuming those lawmakers, well, anybody who would think that they're intelligent. But I think that what is at play here, particularly you were showing the protest, is that it's an effort to, if they aren't morons who are moroning dangerously out in the streets, because these are the same people in all of their dishonesty who were on a climate crusade to force the American people to buy and drive electric vehicles. That was the Biden administration plan, that by 2032, 2/3 of the vehicles in this country were going to be electric vehicles. That was going to be forced on the American people. But now you have these individuals out, fake destroying Teslas, some vandals really destroying Tesla. So it was never about fighting climate change. It was never about saving Mother Earth. It was about maintaining power and control over the American people. And so they've exposed their own hypocrisy and dishonesty. But I do think that some of this, what this display we're seeing over the weekend, is to hurt Tesla, hurt Tesla's stock, and to force Musk out of what he's doing at the federal government, because if you dial back the size of it, even monetarily, again, you are removing the power and control that they have over the American people. But it's not going to happen.
So Joe Rogan had some thoughts on how this is all coming together. Take a listen here.
They think that, like, these people are fed up. That's why they're going to the Tesla dealerships. No, they're being paid, and they're trying to crash the stock of Tesla. They're trying to put people into panic mode so that it puts pressure on Elon to drop Doge. Like, this is what's going on. Like, and you're watching it as if it's this organic moment. And it's a puppet show. You're watching a puppet show.
I also have to remember that during the entire 2024 election, we heard a lot from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris about political violence that we would be seeing if a Republican came into office. What do you make of all of that?
If the left, if the liberals, if the Democrats ever cared and care now about political violence, we would be hearing a loud chorus from Democrat lawmakers, from well-known liberals, that this must stop. And that every person who's arrested must be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The very first person I heard speak about it was Ro Khanna. And Ro Khanna represents the area of the nation that is Silicon Valley, and these are tech leaders. I would expect Ro Khanna to speak out, but I would expect everybody to speak out in favor of one of the greatest inventors and industrialist of this century, and certainly of American history, and speak out against violence. One other thing I just want to point out, that in terms of
almost out of time. Go ahead.
Tesla has the most made in America automobiles.
Yeah.
Tesla, there's no such thing as a fully made in America car, but on average, the Tesla cars, 81% of those vehicles are made in America. It's the highest of any car here in the United States. So what does Tesla stand for? The US of A. What do those wackos stand for? Well, the Soviet Union, maybe.
Well, Democrats can speak up at any time. We're, of course, be watching for it in the meantime. Dagan, thank you so much.
Come on, bring it on. Bring it on.
Elon Musk rocking a cheese head as he drives the left crazy. Over 200 Tesla takedown protests erupting over the weekend, with liberals smashing toy Tesla cars, hurling Nazi accusations at every Cybertruck they could find, and others busting out a Tesla two-step outside the dealerships, getting down to the electric slide. While their comrades burned down the electric cars, Elon Musk is still shocked by all the hatred.
Isn't it shocking how much violence and hatred is coming from the left? I mean, isn't it supposed to be the party that they claim to be the party of empathy? And yet they're burning Teslas and shooting up dealerships and calling for the death of the president and me? I'm like, guys, you know, this is insane. Like, they're gone psycho. It was inevitable that at least a few Soros operatives would be in the audience. Give my regards to George. Say hi to George from me.
But who's actually got time to sing dopey protest songs outside a Tesla dealership? According to Business Insider, it's a bunch of liberal boomers who traded their tie-dye for NPR tote bags. Quote, I attended 2 Tesla takedown protests. One generation showed up more than others. I noticed that the crowds in Ann Arbor and Troy were primarily people over the age of 65, white and retired from jobs that depended on public funding as teachers, professors at local universities, and social workers. Jessica Tarlov, how many Teslas did you torch this weekend?
Toys or big ones?
Both.
None. I am happier to see the smashing of a toy, though, rather than the real thing. So I think we're making violent progress in all of that. And senior citizens are always the most engaged. They vote the most and they turn out to protest the most. So none of this is really a surprise. What was a surprise, though, was hearing Elon Musk, who is in Wisconsin because he's trying to buy an election there for a Supreme Court seat. And he's saying, you know, we're the Soros operatives, but we're basically at Musk operative level. So he's the biggest donor by far and away, nearly $20 million given. And there's a chart that you can all Google and pull up, and it shows the other people who've donated. The Democrats down there at the bottom of it with, you know, a couple $1 million that they've thrown in there versus Musk. And what he's not telling people is that he's in the process of suing to overturn a Wisconsin law that prevents Tesla from operating and owning dealerships there in Wisconsin. They only allow third parties to be the ones that are operating them, not the auto manufacturers themselves. So it's about his own interest, which is the same thing as getting more of these government contracts. And everything that he's accusing the other side of doing, he's actually doing himself. And we're going in circles about this. The Republican National Committee, blind eye again to what Musk is doing. They were threatening to sue over a group that is handing out ice cream cones to college kids in support of Susan Crawford, who's the Democratic candidate. They said that was, quote unquote, election bribery. But Elon Musk handing over literal checks for $1 million is no big deal.
Oh, okay.
Citizens United, where are you?
I don't care. Judge Janine.
I got to tell you, I didn't know that there was something wrong with suing and using the courts and the process if you're prevented from selling a car in a particular area. I think that's the right way to handle it. I think
To
what
buy
the
the election?
Democrats
To buy the seat?
to sue so that he can sell his car. That's what you were referencing. But this whole thing, I mean, it just goes to show how inauthentic they are. I mean, whether it's the singing or the protesting or this guy, the one guy here, he's dancing with a stick that has a swastika sign on it. So it's like two-stepping with a swastika sign. I mean, these people are idiots. But the thing that concerns me most is the silence on the part of the Democrats. To me, silence is acceptance. And the acceptance and the rare Democrat who will come out and say, I don't support this kind of thing, or the burning or torching or any of this incitement, it's too rare, but it's what the Democrats do. It's a party that's filled with hate. They don't use the courts. They instead, whether it was from the George Floyd riots to the occupation in 2020 in Seattle, Washington, to the Kenosha riots in Wisconsin, where over 100 businesses were destroyed, the attack on the federal courthouse, where it was a nightly riot at a federal courthouse, to Inauguration Day, where there was police vehicles and businesses set on fire, to Antifa attacks at Berkeley, riots at the Supreme Court after the Dobbs decision, the Atlanta Cop City. I could go on. I'm going to bore you. But this is who the Democrats are. They are haters. They use violence. They don't know how to use the courts in a way to protect their own rights. And it is disgusting. And the Molotov cocktails and everything they're doing is a violation of law in our institutions. And I hope that Miss Jasmine Crockett, I hope that she was happy with her day of action, because it didn't seem to come to much at all.
Greg, were you surprised by the level of protests? Shocked? Did you not care?
Well, I was out on Saturday. It was a beautiful day in Lower Manhattan. My family, my large family, we went out. We got breakfast. We walked through Soho with the dog and the baby. It was really nice. It was objectively serene. 6 blocks away, there was, I think, a protest at one of the Tesla dealerships, but I felt a million miles away. Because it makes me think, I like to get as close as I can to this human element, like what possesses people to fill up their lives with politics. And how can their resentment be so easily directed at a fresh cause? This is transient activism. It's 1 month it was against the police, then it's the Palestinians, then it's climate, now it's Tesla. The only thing you can do as a normal human being is kind of just gawk and just walk by. There's not a lot of these people, but I think the difference between the left and the right is that, I would say since the late 1960s, the cry was, we're making politics personal, that the things that you vote for are reflective of who you are. So no longer could Republicans and Democrats kind of hang out together, play golf together, work together. The left, instead of focusing their dislike for the policy, they focused their hate for the person who holds that policy or holds that vote. Therefore, if you're a Trump voter, I can hate you, I can chase you in a subway and take your hat. Imagine living like that. So if somebody doesn't completely agree with you, you hold resentment for everybody, and it can be easily targeted for anything. Someone once said, and I said this on Friday, you hate the sin and not the sinner, because the underlying belief is that we're all kind of basket cases. We all got problems, but you can see the problems. You can look at these people and you can go, this isn't about Tesla. This isn't about the climate. This isn't about the police. These people have underlying spiritual, family emptiness. And for them to just so easily fill up that hole with rage, with something, and as the judge said, it was whether it's the George Floyd riots or even like trans extremism, you can see that there is something definitely wrong with them.
Someone wrote a book about that.
What was the book called?
Get It Together.
Get It Together.
Oh,
but
I read that book.
Don't you find it interesting that once identity politics kind of like fizzled out, we now have a division by class. It's now a class warfare thing. But you also saw very few blacks in these protests. And I think because they learned from BLM that it was all BS, that they got burned once. So what you see, no matter the age, unwell, disheveled loners. We're crowdsourcing the unwell. We're using people who have nothing to lose for whatever purpose it is politically, and they just direct it at the latest target.
Yep.
Katie?
Well, to Greg's point, as the old saying goes, when the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And that's exactly what they're doing. Elon Musk is a smart guy. I don't know why he's surprised about this behavior from the left. This has been their standard operating procedure for decades, going back to the Weather Underground, which then got into the university system, which then trained all these people who are now older and retired that to go out, and that violence is okay so long as it's for the right political cause. But there's two types of protesters you're seeing. You're seeing the retired white boomers who are like taking their last stand of activism. But then you're also seeing the trained professional agitators who are getting paid to do this, who are setting these dealerships on fire, throwing Molotov cocktails, getting violent, doing more than keying a car, putting gum on a Tesla. And the only way this is going to stop is when there are consequences for their behavior. So in states like Florida, it's a felony to vandalize a vehicle. So the people are learning a hard lesson there. And in states or cities where the prosecutors are soft on crime, the federal government and DOJ, Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel have said, we will come after you and throw the book, and we'll treat this like domestic terrorism, because that's exactly what it is. One thing I want to say about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, Elon has put money into that race, but Susan Crawford has also gotten tons of money from outside groups. And she has openly said she needs to win that seat because she wants to take away 2 congressional seats by redistricting from Republicans. So she's doing it for her own political ambitions, not to uphold the law. So you can argue that Elon has his interests, but so did the Democrats in Wisconsin.
I'm just saying he's, by him victim blaming up there and saying, like, I'm the innocent guy here and it's George Soros that's doing this, that it's denying the fact that he's the single biggest money influence in this election. And they also tried
he's
to.
Pretty open about the money influence he's giving.
Well,
it's
not the
dark
reason
money.
for it also. He doesn't get up there and say, oh, I can't, my Tesla dealerships can't operate here. I can't run them. He's not talking about that at all. And Susan Crawford, I don't know, that's like her personal goal. Like she's going to run for the congressional seat, or she understands the control.
She has said we need to take the control so we can redistrict, so we can take away Republican seats. And Hakeem Jeffries has confirmed it.
All right. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
El Salvador recognizes that these gang members are members of a terrorist organization, which is exactly how President Trump is approaching MS-13 and TDA as well.
That's Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on her recent trip. She joins us now. Thank you for having us at the department.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today.
First, I want to ask you about President Trump. He said the attacks on Teslas. Do you see that as domestic terrorism?
I do, and it's an act of violence, and it has ramifications on community members, and at times has risked people's lives. I do see that as an act of domestic terrorism, and we certainly have a president who's willing to use his full authorities to go after people that choose to destroy people and communities and businesses in the way that people have.
I want to talk to you about your trip. El Salvador, Colombia, Mexico. What did you take away from that?
Well, my task as Homeland Security Secretary is to secure the homeland of the United States of America. So I have jurisdiction over every person that comes in and out of this country, every product that comes in and out of this country, and everything that transpires over the internet. Talking to these presidents of these 3 countries was very productive. I had a conversation with the president of El Salvador about the TDA members that he accepted and took into his CCOP prison. We toured that prison, which I'm sure you are well aware of, and
that was
saw
some
the
of the most
conditions
striking
there.
images from that trip,
Yeah.
of you touring that prison. Just the image alone, was that sending a message?
Yes, people need to see that image. They need to see that the United States is going to use every tool that we have to make our communities safer, that is a consequence of someone who is a terrorist. The president has declared Tren de Aragua and MS-13 as terrorist organizations, and the president of El Salvador has as well. The only people allowed in that prison are terrorists. And to tour that and to look at that was giving the American people the transparency that they want out of their government. They were able to see exactly where we're sending these people who have murdered and raped Americans, that have decimated communities, and there's going to be consequences for individuals who continue to do that. My conversation with that president was, will you take more of these terrorists? And he said, absolutely, we will. We will take the worst of the worst and make sure that they're facing consequences for what they've done to your country.
I think there's a lot of people who look at this, Madam Secretary, and say, yes, get the bad guys out. But they want to make sure that the people that are rounded up and taken out are really those guys. There are some allegations from activists and media and immigration attorneys that a few of the people you sent to El Salvador via the Alien Enemies Act are not members of criminal gangs, or that they might not be. Do you see those as credible at all? And if you found out, would you work to take them out of El Salvador?
I trust our intelligence agencies and the intelligence individuals that are within the Department of Homeland Security, that the individuals who are there are members and a part of this organization and have worked with them. And while we were there at that prison, we not only talked about how to identify these members of these terrorist organizations, but what they did, their actions they took, the case files we built on them, and how we verified that those individuals should be there in that prison.
So you're pretty confident.
Continue to do that. I am. I am very confident in the fact that those individuals that are there should be there, and that by belonging to these organizations, they were choosing to be on the side that wanted to destroy the United States of America.
Immigration enforcement is one of the biggest things that is a positive for President Trump right now, yet Democratic lawmakers talk about it a lot. Take a listen.
Any immigrant can be accused of association with gangs and cartels, and they will be deported without due process of law.
There's not much to this president's agenda. It's tax breaks for the rich and rounding up immigrants. That's the whole program.
You have to have due process. What if you got the wrong person? That is the whole point of all of this.
So what do you say to those Democrats and what's happening now with Tom Homan and what you're seeing on the border?
I would say those Democrats are doing exactly what they've done for years. They're trying to use fear to control people. They're using fear to promote their agenda and lying about what the situation is really here on the ground. We are doing due diligence to make sure that we're going after these criminals that have perpetuated violence on American citizens, and we're removing them from our country. Our president has told us clearly he's prioritizing these criminals and the worst of the worst, those with final removal orders, and that we're making sure that not only did we secure our border, but that we're making sure we don't let those people back into this country. We have deported over 120 people that are on the known terrorist watch list out of this country, over 800 TDA members, and over 100,000 different arrests have been made of criminals that are out of this country. Every single family that can identify with Laken Riley's family, Jocelyn Nungary's family, people who were devastated by these criminals are thankful that they're gone, and President Trump is on the right side of history.
Do you think the Mexican president, you talked to her, is doing enough to defeat the cartels down there?
You know, we talked extensively about that. I gave her some options of more she could do. She's participated a lot on our southern border, but we want her to secure her southern border with Guatemala. We want her to share some more information with us. Right now, we don't scan every single shipment that comes into this country over air freight. We have some information sharing that could happen on criminal background checks. So I gave her a list of things that President Trump would be very happy to see, and she was remarkable. It was supposed to be a half-hour meeting. We met for almost 2 hours. Very productive. She did sign some of those agreements with us, and I asked her specifically to share biometric information with us, and she's willing to discuss that, even though that in her country would be a little bit controversial. But she's putting a good faith effort, but President Trump is clear. He doesn't want people to keep talking. He wants to see action, and she has an opportunity to do some things that I will give a report to the president on and see if we can deal with the tariff situation that may be facing her people.
Madam Secretary, you talk about the terrorist watch list and the people rounded up. We are removed from 9/11, but the terrorist threat is still there. What do you tell people about what you see every day, knowing what you know about the terrorist threat facing this country?
That it's very real. It could happen today. It could happen tomorrow. We have people in this country that would do 9/11 all over again if given the opportunity. And we have to have a strong president that stays dedicated towards securing not just the interior of our country, but the exterior, and using every tool that he has to fix what Joe Biden broke. Joe Biden purposely broke this country and our democracy and put us at grave risk. So I'm so thankful that we have a president that recognizes the threats that we have and lets me do my job to follow through on what task he gave me.
You know, we had a lot of focus on the Doge interviews I did with Elon Musk and members of that Doge team. They've been in every agency. I assume they're here.
They are.
You're working with Doge. What are they finding, and are they rooting out some of the waste fraud?
Yeah, they've been fantastic. We have worked with them. I take a lot of extra items to them, all my contracts, evaluations, people who are in position, should they be there? Is this the mission that that agency was created for? What can we do to become more streamlined and efficient? They have been extremely helpful in helping us identify that and looking at where the American people are getting ripped off. And that they're tired of. I tell everybody that every dollar that goes out the door that shouldn't be spent is somebody's Social Security check that won't be there someday when they need it. And President Trump, by allowing Elon and the Doge team to be in here and evaluate everything, really brings a new accountability to government that we've never seen. And is it going to be ugly? Absolutely. For these bureaucrats here who are fighting us every single day, who don't want the dollars to quit getting spent, who want to keep their jobs, yeah, they're going to fight back. But I will tell you, this government is more responsive than it's ever been before. It's refreshing to be here under an administration that truly gets up every day and decides, you know what, today I'm fighting for the American taxpayer. You know, taxpayers oftentimes in our offices don't have a lobbyist that shows up for them. There's lobbyists that show up for every other industry and every other contract and every other business. The American common man deserves a person that will sit there and lobby for them, and that's President Trump.
Well, Madam Secretary, thank you very much. We'll talk down in the National Operations Center in a bit.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.